Welcome to the Toxics Reduction via Responsible E-Waste Management video series, presented to you by the Delta Institute with funding from the USEPA Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. In this video, Matt Harrison, Technical Associate with the Delta Institute, brings us a presentation on emerging trends in e-waste regulation. This content was originally created for a workshop series in Toledo and Cleveland, Ohio.
Hi everyone, my name is Matt Harrison. I'm a technical associate at the Delta Institute. The Delta Institute is a nonprofit located in the city of Chicago working on economic development and sustainability. Today I'm going to talk to you about trends in electronic end-of-life management practices. The trends that we're seeing are growing proliferation of e-waste laws, increased reliance or interest in green purchasing and recycling, and increased reliance on collection events as well as certifications and registries. So what you're seeing here is a map of the United States. This map shows the states that currently have an e-waste law on the books, the states in which those laws are pending, and the states without those laws. The states that currently have the laws are listed in green. You'll note that California is a slightly different shade of green than the others, which we'll come back to in a minute. The things to point out about this map are that most of the populous areas of our country, including both coasts, the Great Lakes region, and Texas, are covered by some type of e-scrap law. The exceptions to this is Ohio, but the thing to note is that about 65% of Americans are covered by some type of law. This slide is just showing how those laws have proliferated over the last decade or so. We can see the early adopters came in 2003 and 2004 with a proliferation of laws in 2007 and 2008. So the trend may be slowing, but it does continue today. There are a couple different types of laws I'm going to talk about. The first is an outright ban on the landfilling or incineration of electronic equipment. This exists in 18 states. The second type is an advanced recycling fee. You'll recall that California was a slightly different shade of green than the other states, and that's because California is the only state that relies on this type of law. So under this type of law, consumers are assessed a fee at the time of purchasing an electronic product. That fee is used to fund the collection of electronic equipment at the end of its useful life, as well as recycling systems. A more common type of law is the producer responsibility law. These laws vary a lot in terms of the products covered and the restrictions or compliance measures that are imposed on producers. However, some of the features that are commonly part of these laws include a requirement to register with the state and pay an annual fee, to operate recycling systems or take-back programs, and to meet a certain percentage of products recycled. This is a map of states that have a landfill incineration ban or both. So based on this map and the first map that we showed, it suggests that Ohio has no restrictions, that it would be acceptable to give away your electronics, to throw them away, to bury them, or to burn them. But in fact, that's not the case. Ohio does have electronic equipment guidance. Ohio EPA's Division of Hazardous Waste Management encourages businesses to recycle electronic equipment no longer in use because it can contain hazardous materials. Donating equipment for reuse is the environmentally preferred alternative. So effectively what we have here is a policy without the force of law behind it. What this actually means is that when electronics are recycled, they're not considered to be a waste product and therefore are not regulated. If electronics are not recycled, the owners of that equipment have to determine whether it exhibits a characteristic similar to hazardous waste, and then those owners are responsible for knowing and complying with the hazardous waste regulations. So some business owners may know whether their electronic equipment contains hazardous materials and in the precise quantities in which those materials exist. But most are unlikely to know that, and finding out can be a burden for business owners because it can be costly and time-consuming. In response to that, Ohio proposed Senate Bill 253 to establish a recycling program for covered electronic devices. This law is in the tradition of the producer responsibility laws. Unfortunately, it looks like 253 is not going to become the law in Ohio, but the point here is that e-scrap laws serve two useful purposes. The first is to improve end-of-life management, and the second is to remove uncertainty about practices that are prohibited. Another trend that we're seeing is a growing interest in green purchasing and recycling. We're seeing a lot of this in our own work. Right now, Delta is working on a survey of companies in Illinois to assess barriers and best management strategies for electronics purchasing practices, and we're also working with companies in Toledo and Cleveland to develop best practices for them. So the next trend under discussion is growing reliance on e-waste collection events. We're seeing these happen through private partners, civic organizations, and at the municipal and local levels. We're also seeing an increase in e-waste collection events through civic organizations at the municipal level and with private partners. These not only provide an important public service, but also raises awareness about best practices. The last trend we're seeing is a growing reliance on certifications and registries. So this slide is a snapshot of different types of certifications. For example, EPEAT is a registry for green electronics that can inform purchasers of lower impact products. It currently includes a handful of product types and is continuing to add to that list. eStewards and R2 are certified recyclers. Certification and registries designate leadership in the fields of purchasing and recycling. Customers of certified vendors can be assured that their products are produced or handled according to best practices with reduced impacts to stakeholders and the environment. Okay, thanks for joining us today. This concludes our presentation on the trends we're seeing in end-of-life management for electronic products.